asking questions is a life hack for growth and development and change and transformation, and to the person that you want to be, the man, woman, husband, wife, mother, father, child, uncle, aunt, executive, leader, entrepreneur, military leader, homeschool mom, homeschool dad, that you want to be, that best version. Y'all, man, I would challenge you all. I'd challenge you all. Ask one person a day, one question. I'll give you a little base hit challenge homework there. If anyone is listening and would take me up on this, one person, one question a day about something that interests you. And it doesn't even have to be deep or profound, but just to get in the habit of asking questions. Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. EQ Gangsters. So fascinating story today from one of my coaching sessions. This does not happen very often. And so let's see. This is going to be about, well, there's a lot of lessons in this one. The coaching client whose time, evidently, I completely wasted. So, senior leader in this big, very, very large organization, multi-billion-dollar organization, and this is maybe third or fourth time with him. His professionally, he's fairly dialed in. Personally, not so much. And not a whole lot of self-awareness. And so, and I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to receive coaching before, life coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching. You know, maybe you've had the experience of sports coaching, which is kind of a very different experience than leadership or life coaching. And so there's, in one of the EQ assessments that I'm certified in, EQI 2.0, it assesses 15 different areas. In the leadership assessment, because you can run the report, you can run different reports based on the data that you're wanting to highlight. And with senior leaders, I will, I'm talking like C-level, not like SEA, not like Navy, but C as in the corporate executive level. I like to run, there's an actual leadership EQ report. Well, in that EQ leadership report, it has a separate section that the normal EQI 2.0 report assessment does not show. It doesn't show that data. It only shows it on the leadership report. And that's called the derailers, the leadership derailers. So there are 4 areas that this assessment and these scientists and researchers and stuff have determined that if a leader does a poor job in one of these 4 areas, it is a leadership derailer. It has potentially catastrophic effect. And one of those is called impulse control. One of the 4 areas is called impulse control. You know, so if a leader flies off the handle and has a very short temper and gets emotionally hijacked, emotionally triggered, adrenaline, emotions flood their system. They're no longer thinking logically, rationally, clearly. And as with 9 out of 9.5 people, when we are emotionally hijacked, emotionally triggered, we physiologically get dumber. So the decision making drops significantly, if not exponentially, when we get in that emotional state. So impulse control, this is an area that this particular leader does not have. He does not have very good impulse control. It's very low impulse control. Other areas are strong. Of his EQ is strong. Impulse control is not one of them, which is, again, one of the 4 derailers. And so again, professionally, he's fairly dialed in. Personally, not so much. And with that extra context, that one of those areas that is lower on the EQ scale is impulse control. So I'll let you kind of have your imagination regarding one's personal life with low impulse control, and so you start mixing that dynamic in your professional life, that can have very quick, very catastrophic results. So and there is some awareness around that dynamic, not to the extent that there needs to be, but there is some awareness to that. So anyway, the first part, we jump kind of into some of the impulse control arena, and I'm asking questions and kind of doing just asking questions that force him to think through this aspect of his life that he normally does not do a lot of thinking about. Up to this point in his life, he's a younger leader and just does not. This is one of those kind of sacred cows that many of us have. We have our sacred cows that we're just, hey, nope, this is my baby, and I am not letting you have it, touch it, look at it, explore it, discover it, that kind of thing. And so as a result, when for again, most of us, unexplored areas in our lives can lead to some significant consequences. And so I am taking a flashlight, kind of looking around, but safely, always safely, always, caringly, lovingly, empathetically, asking questions just to, again, help bring light to an area that again, with this assessment, he is aware of, I'm aware of, needs work. And so, boom, we spend half to 2/3 on that, and then we jump into some business stuff. I ask him a couple pointed leadership questions, a couple pointed business questions that also he's never thought of, and he's never written down his answers to these questions, these leadership and business questions. And I think there's power in writing down thoughts. There's power. And so I gave him time to do that. Anyway, boom. So in my head, it was a very helpful, very productive conversation, discussion, and session in my head. After every single session, I ask one question. I mean, there, a number of questions, but the last question that I ask is always, and I got this from Michael Bungay Stanier, who I interviewed, episode 283, maybe, plus or minus. Michael Bungay Stanier, he's a world-renowned author and executive coach, leadership coach. and has written he's an amazing author. So I got this from Michael Bungay Stanier in one of his books. I think it was maybe The Advice Trap. And that question is, what was most helpful for you during our conversation today or during our session today? Which helps. There's a lot of kind of psychology behind that question. You're having folks kind of reflect, do some reflection, which is you're helping increase some self-awareness, some intention. You're having them do, it's like a quick review in their mind, maybe read through their notes if they took notes, and helping them kind of figure out which points that were discussed or brought up, or questions that were brought up, or thoughts that were brought up were most important from their perspective. And it's helpful for me as a coach so that I can understand, of the 2 things, 5 things, 10 things we talked about, what resonated the most with my client in that session. Well, I said, hey, so what was most helpful for you? And he's like, well, nothing really. I'm sure my nonverbals, I was like, I got my big eyebrows. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see all my nonverbals. I'm like, okay, wow, all right. So he's like, yeah, I really can't think of anything. I don't know what's going on in your big brain of yours, but like, I didn't think anything was helpful today. I've got so many thoughts from this. And I'm trying to like wrap my head around, how this leader got nothing from, again, a very intentional dive into some very specific and intentional areas of his life that I know are not dialed in. And so I said, okay, that totally fine. So just help me understand, because I want to understand, because obviously I don't want to do this again. And you say, oh yeah, it was a waste of time. So, I want to learn here. I said, so the first 2/3 of the questions I was asking you about this area of impulse control was not helpful for you at all. Oh, well, I guess maybe, I don't know. And so he's not like landing the plane. So I'm like, okay. I said, no, that's totally fine. All right. And based on some of the questions I asked him, like, admittedly, he doesn't think about this stuff, which is part of the problem, right? You can't manage what you're not aware of. You can't change what you don't track. And so I said, hey, no, yeah, okay, cool, no sweat. And I said, so those 2 leadership questions and 2 business questions that I asked you that you've never thought of before and didn't have answers to prior to me asking you, that are very important as a senior business leader within this very large company, and you being in charge of people, like, these are things that not only should you know and have memorized and have off the top of your tongue, but should be teaching to your leaders on the regular. You know what I mean? This is like leadership 101 stuff. I said, so that was not helpful for you at all either. Well, he was just hammering it on. I'm like, dude, super, no sweat. No sweat. Thank you for that feedback, bro. He's like, no, hey man, I'm not trying to make it personal. I said, no, dude, it's not. Look, I got thick skin, bro. If you got no value from our conversation today, dude, no sweat. Like that, it helps me, and you let me ask you some clarifying questions. Like, I will approach our next session very, very differently to hopefully make sure that you get value. But then it got me thinking, like, just because I know as the coach that there are areas that he needs to work on does not mean that he thinks he needs to work on these areas. So, which, and his self-awareness obviously isn't the greatest either. And I think the other thing that is so hard for me to wrap my head around is one of my strengths, and this is probably not going to be shocking for those of y'all that have read the book StrengthsFinder 2.0 and taken the assessment. It spits out your top 5. Well, it spits out all your strengths, and it's super dope. It's a very highly recommended. StrengthsFinder 2.0. It's by Gallup poll. Gallup. It's a huge, massive international organization. Anyway, it's a very legit assessment. One of my top 5 is called input, where you're always, and an input and learner are kind of cousins, which is another one of the strengths. It wasn't my top 5, but I know it's probably top 10. But input is you're always seeking input, you're always wanting to learn, you're always wanting to grow, which in the EQ assessment is called self-actualization, which is one of those 15 areas that gets assessed. That one was high for me because I love learning and growing so much. And so for somebody to be sitting in front of a coach that I feel very confident in my abilities to ask questions that lead to growth for the right people. Because I've been doing it for 20 years. This is a craft that I've invested probably close to 20,000 hours into at this point in my life. So no joke. I've got 10,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. I've got 7,000 hours of group facilitation. I've got probably a couple hundred hours of training that I've taken. I've got hundreds of hours of reading, hundreds of books on, like I'm up there. I'm 17, 18, probably close to 20,000 hours. So now, does that mean I've arrived? No, of course not. I am in the constant pursuit of improving and mastering my craft of coaching and leader development and asking questions and emotional intelligence. And obviously for me too, my own spiritual walk, relationship with the Lord, my journey in my relationship with God and better understanding of God's word. And so, but I'm very confident, and again, I've got hundreds and hundreds of testimonies confirming that I've been able to help a lot of leaders grow, change, improve personally and professionally. And again, still very much on that journey. Anyway, so to sit down with somebody, with a leader, a big senior leader, that learning and growth is not even on his brain. And not only period, but especially when sitting down with, a semi-decent coach. Any coach, like decent, not even if I sucked as a coach. Like, and here's another, well, man, I get spun up. I'm getting fired up. Can you guys tell I'm getting fired? I'm getting fired up. Here's another one. And now I'll tell you, this is not exclusive to this guy. This is, I will tell you, man, this is really good. Wow, I just had a huge insight. So check this out. I am currently coaching 60 leaders, 60, from 8 different companies. 1% of the leaders that I have worked with over the past few years, man, it may even be less than 1%. Wow. Less than 1%. Man, this is huge. less than 1% of the leaders that I work with ever show up to the table with questions for me. Which, the years that I have had coaches and coaching, 80% of the time, I have shown up with questions for my coach. Maybe, yeah, let's say conservatively 80%. 80% of the time. Why? Because I'm freaking hungry. I want to learn. I want to grow. So it's just, anyway, that's a whole other ballgame. Man, I hadn't even thought about that one. That's huge. So that's another mind-blowing thing for me, that 99% of leaders that I am working with, so that's the disclaimer, because obviously there's a zillion leaders, but the little handful of 60 leaders that I'm working with, or even out of the last 100 to 200 that I've worked with over the last few years, less than 1% have shown up with any questions. Wow, man, that is crazy. Which, man, this is a whole nother episode, but I'm gonna keep going because I want to keep the momentum. Man, y'all, how good are you at asking questions? Like, asking questions. Number one, it's an art, in my opinion. It is an art, not a science. It's an art, and it's got to be practiced intentionally. And asking questions is a life hack for growth and development and change and transformation, and to the person that you want to be, the man, woman, husband, wife, mother, father, child, uncle, aunt, executive, leader, entrepreneur, military leader, homeschool mom, homeschool dad, that you want to be, that best version. Y'all, man, I would challenge you all. I'd challenge you all. Ask one person a day, one question. I'll give you a little base hit challenge homework there. If anyone is listening and would take me up on this, one person, one question a day about something that interests you. And it doesn't even have to be deep or profound, but just to get in the habit of asking questions. Man, I could do a whole workshop on asking questions. Man, I think I may do that, y'all. Okay. What resonated with you all? What was helpful for you in this episode? What resonated? Emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Emotionally healthy leaders create emotionally healthy cultures and organizations, which create maximized results, outcomes, performance, and engagement. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Thank you for rating, reviewing, subscribing, sharing. So thankful to be on this journey with you all.